Hello. It's so nice to be able to be with you again, even though it's in this way. I hope once again soon we can meet in person. I'm speaking to you today on the topic, Be an Arc Bender. Be an Arc Bender. Sonia Renee Taylor writes, "We will not go back to normal. We should not long to return. Normal never was. Before this virus, we normalized greed, inequity, exhaustion, depletion, hoarding, and hate. We should not go back. We are being given the opportunity to stitch a new garment, one that fits all of humanity and nature." You may have heard these words attributed to Brene Brown. But like our quote for today from Theodore Parker, when good words are used and used again, they're often ascribed to different people. Nevertheless, good words are good words. The opportunity to stitch a new garment out of a new social fabric is a unique and sacred one. We must not waste it. I don't think any of you good folks deny that the pandemic has revealed enormous social and economic inequities. It's not that we didn't know they were there. It's just that the normalcy of our busy everyday lives hid them from us. Now, the Band-Aid has been ripped off or the curtain has been parted, whatever image suits your imagination. And we cannot unsee what we are seeing. A danger lies in the potential to buy into the gaslighting that is going on. For those in power would have us continue to believe in existing systems which accrue benefits only to the few. If we miss this opportunity for profound change, the bend in the moral arc will recede even further into the distance. Sonia Renee Taylor, who I mentioned at the beginning of this talk, says in another speech that her grandmother taught her to call a thing a thing. To call a thing a thing. One thing we need to call out about this pandemic is that it's not the same experience for everyone. I've been thinking a lot about this from my position of privilege. I have a roof over my head, a full refrigerator. I have a retirement income. I'm not homeschooling children like so many parents, or trying to work from home, or worried about my business. I am at risk by age, but not by race or class. I have insurance, and I am in good health. A friend posted a parody in pandemic of privilege. It depicted yachts positioned in such a way as when you viewed them from above, they spelled out, "We are all in this together." Yeah, right. A more accurate metaphor is that we are in the same storm, but we are not in the same boat. We are in the same storm, but we are not in the same boat. We share sadness, worry, anxiety, but not about the same things or at the same level. Another thing to call out is unequal power dynamics. This is played out daily in the news when we see governors having to compete for resources, and when the advice of the scientific and medical communities are upended by political and economic interests. Truth-telling, by calling a thing, is a very powerful force for good. What else can we do about what we see? I think we are called to be arc benders. Arc benders. I first heard this term in a blog post by John Pavlovitz, who's a Christian progressive writer. And when I mentioned that this would be my topic to Pastor Roberta, she told me that there was already a progressive Jewish movement called Bend the Arc that works diligently to fight anti-Semitism and influence political policies and decisions. And since then I've found that there's a podcast called We Are the Arcbenders. And this is put together by two women who tell good news stories about things people are doing right where they are. So as we contemplate this topic together today, we are in good company. Like you, I wonder what a new social garment could look like and how we could sew it together. I don't think anyone has a finished product in mind. There are still so many variables, so many unknowns. As we take steps forward, I hope we would, at the very least, do what Dr. King suggested and keep our eyes on the prize of justice. As we lay out new pattern pieces, I would pray that justice would guide our hands. Every thread must include all the colors. Every stitch must be evenly made with justice in mind. This congregation, and many of you as individuals, have labored for justice for a long, long time. You've pledged resources, signed petitions, made phone calls, written letters, held protest signs, and on and on and on. You've grown weary of the struggle at times, and so have I. So have I. We have tried to bend the moral arc by the force of our own wills. We have jumped up and down on it in indignation. Bend, darn you, bend! Weary from our efforts, we've reignited our fires and gone back out there again and again. But now, the scope is so wide, we face an unfamiliar landscape. In our country, the divisions have not been this wide since the Civil War. Drowning in information, we long for truth. Riddled with anxiety, we long for security. Consumed with turmoil, we long for peace. Being arcbenders now and in the future will require a new set of skills, because we are both the helpers and ones needing help. We must reject any paradigm that does not lift up the reality that our own liberation is inextricably bound to that of others. We cannot be whole unless others are also whole. Arcbenders can lead the way by upending traditional models of helping. We can refuse to tolerate unequal power dynamics between the served and those who are serving. Too often, I think, we look at people in need and forget that they too have gifts. They too have talents. They have a lot to offer and good knowledge of their own community's assets. Asset-based community development is an approach that was started at the Northwestern University, and it helps a community look at what it already has and mobilize those resources to take action based on what the own members seem appropriate. Now, this doesn't mean that no outside resources are ever needed. It simply honors and respects the people who are already present in a community. A small but determined group in Fernandina has many participants from the branch here in Fernandina, and they're meeting together with others in the community to tackle issues of economic injustice and racial inequality. They're called Cracking the Code, Bridging the Gap. And I really think this initiative is worthy of your whole congregation's attention and support. And I hope you will hear more about it soon. But first to remember today about being arc benders is that we are to know that our wholeness is bound up with that of others. Next, to be arc benders, we need to start with ourselves. Granted, this is hard work. Have you ever tried to change another person's behavior? It's absolutely futile. You only have power over you. Leaders in family, church, and society are able to self-govern. They are able to self-govern, and by that I mean we acknowledge we cannot change in the world what we are unwilling to change in ourselves. This requires a self-inventory. We know we're all acculturated to this society. We have, by osmosis, not by choice, absorbed all of its isms. So pick one. Start anywhere. Review your attitudes and actions. Where you feel discomfort, sit with it. Don't try to fix it. Don't minimize feeling vulnerable. Just let it be. And then, let any action that comes out of your reflection bear the weight and the direction that your feelings have led you. I guarantee you that any action that comes out of this type of reflection will bear fruit, both in you and in the community around you. To be an arc bender, start with yourself. And to be an arc bender, be courageously hopeful. Be courageously hopeful. Now, I'm not talking about pie-in-the-sky attitudes that dismiss evidence or defy reason. I am talking about honesty that acknowledges difficulties in the present and chooses to continue to move forward with the conviction that the moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice. When Theodore Parker was writing in the 1850s about his abolitionist views, he could not foresee Reconstruction and then Jim Crow and civil rights. He didn't know his words would be intoned by the likes of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and President Obama. But he knew what he knew. He knew what he knew. He admitted his sight was limited, and he said, I do not pretend to understand the moral universe. The arc is a long one. My eye reaches but little way. I cannot calculate the curve and complete the figure by experience of sight, but I can divine it by conscience. I can divine it by conscience. From what I see, it bends toward justice. It is our conscience that calls us to courageous hopefulness. I wish all of you health and safety in these difficult days. It's hard to accept the reality that the normal we knew will not be again. But by conviction of conscience, we can be part of stitching a new social fabric, one that is reinforced with the conviction that our wholeness is inextricably bound to that of others. We can be arc benders who are brave enough to call a thing a thing. We can remind one another and others that we are in the same storm, but not in the same boat. And we can name the inequities for what they are and resist any temptation to accept a solution that does not address them. We can dare to risk starting with ourselves. We can be honest about our own isms and sit with our discomfort. And we can persist in being courageously hopeful, not because we know all the answers, but because we believe in our heart of hearts. And say it with me from wherever you are. The moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice. Blessed be.